Sorry, I was incorrect in answer. Oh, didn't give the full answer I was asked earlier. The total salary cost is 1.16 million, so average salary of just about 50,000, or just under 50,000. I propose to take questions 5 to 14 together.
Agreed.
I attended the 2019 annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos from the 23rd to 25th of January. The Minister of Finance, Deputy Pascal Donoghue, also attended. This annual event in Davos provides a unique opportunity to network informally with political leaders and senior decision makers from civil society and the corporate world. I had extensive opportunities, both formal and informal, to convey important messages about the strength of Ireland's economy, our perspectives on Brexit and the future of Europe, our ambition to expand the scope and impact of Ireland's international presence, and our approach to international challenges like climate action, sustainable development, migration, international trade and taxation. In terms of my formal engagements, I did several media interviews with Irish and international media, including Euronews, Reuters and Bloomberg. I attended an event hosted by the Gates Foundation, which focused on international development issues, where I had an opportunity to discuss Ireland's approach to international development with Bill Gates and others in attendance, and also to inform them of the government's increase in its overseas development aid budget for 2019 and our plans to focus on the education of girls, nutrition and some other matters. I also participated in a plenary panel discussion on the future of Europe alongside Prime Minister Rutte of the Netherlands, Poland's Prime Minister Morawiecki, Commissioner Malmström and Anna Botin of the Santander Group. I participated in a Young Leaders session where I discussed Ireland's perspectives on the current European challenges, attended a lunchtime event with political, academic and business leaders where the challenges and opportunities of globalisation were discussed. I also had the opportunity to speak bilaterally with a number of my European Council colleagues, including Chancellor Kurz of Austria, Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković, the Prime Minister of Poland, Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel, the Prime Minister of Belgium, Charles Michel. We discussed Brexit and other issues, including the multi-annual financial framework. I also had meetings with the UK Chancellor Philip Hammond, very briefly UK Secretary of State for Health Matt Hancock, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency Fatih Birol. I didn't meet any Chinese politicians or representatives of Chinese companies. I had meetings with senior executives from US multinationals with operations in Ireland, including Tim Cook of Apple, Andy Jassy of Amazon, Chuck Robbins of Cisco, Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook, including Nick Clegg, and Mike Nally of MSD. My discussions focused on Ireland's perspectives on Brexit, trade and international taxation, and the companies updated me on their operations in Ireland and their plans for future expansion. I also spoke at the IDA annual Davos dinner event, which was attended by 50 senior executives of existing and prospective IDA client companies, where I emphasised the strengths that underpin Ireland's success in attracting foreign direct investment. This is a now well-established feature of the annual Davos programme and an important element of the IDA's client engagement strategy.
My first question, Deputy Micheál Martin.
A few days before you went to Davos, Minister Shane Ross was very publicly corrected by the Taoiseach and subsequently ridiculed by Fine Gael ministers when he said that a no-deal Brexit would require extra checks at the border. Yet in Davos, you not only said this, you went much further and you started talking about the army being sent to the border and soldiers being at the border. Now, we don't need another round the houses self-justification for what was a very clearly, deliberately chosen set of words on your behalf. I asked this last week, and I'm really seeking some basic clarity here. Brexit is due to happen in 52 days' time, unless the UK Parliament and the European Union adopt another legal mechanism to go into a transition period or delay Brexit. You have repeatedly said, Taoiseach, that the absence of a transitionary period and something like the permanent backstop, that the absence of both would inevitably lead to cross-border disruption. No one is threatening Ireland with this. This has been our government's position from day one, and it was on this basis that you asked the European Union to adopt the particular strategy in terms of the one that was adopted. This being so, it's well past time, I think, for a direct answer to the question. What will happen at the border in 52 days' time if there is no deal? Now, I asked that last week and the week before and received no answer. I suggest every community and every business in the border area deserve clarity on this. They need to know what they will be facing in 52 days' time if there is a no-deal scenario.
The next to table, Deputy Brendan Howlin.
I want to thank the Taoiseach for his comprehensive reply in relation to the bilateral meetings you had with a number of EU heads of government. Obviously, discordant words were uttered by the Polish Foreign Minister. You had a bilateral meeting, you tell us, with the Polish Prime Minister. Did he share the views of his Foreign Minister? What was the nature of the discussions you had with him? And in any of the other discussions with other EU heads of government, was there complete solidarity with the unified 27 position to date, or did anybody share the concerns expressed by the Polish Foreign Minister publicly? In relation to the comments you made about Ireland closing tax loopholes, do you accept that Ireland is still perceived by many as a place where corporate tax is not fairly levied? And what was the nature of your discussions on this, and were you able to reassure people that the closure of loopholes that existed in the past have changed fundamentally the tax structure in Ireland? Finally, can I ask you in relation to the entire experience and presence in Davos, because a number of leading politicians stayed away from Davos this year. What was the actual total cost of the Irish presence in Davos this year?
Deputy Richard Barrett.
Yeah, you entered into Taoiseach Enda Kenny sort of territory in Davos, Taoiseach. We famously remember how the army were going to be guarding the ATMs because such was the severity of the economic crisis. You decided to emulate the rather bizarre comments of the Taoiseach at that time with the claims that we were going to have the army deployed on the border in the event of a no-deal Brexit, despite the fact that you come in here repeatedly, week after week, when we ask you, are you considering erecting a border to protect the EU single market? In the event of a no-deal, you say, no, it's not even been considered, it's not even been dreamt of, and then you go on international TV at the Davos gathering and say that actually you're thinking of sending the army up there. I mean, it's just bizarre. Taoiseach, could you please explain that? And could you equally explain the really remarkable comment that we're, quote, forever closing tax loopholes when you're challenged about Ireland's tax haven status? Taoiseach, I mean, could we just deal with facts instead of spin? We have 144 billion of gross pre-tax profits declared in this country in the last available figures. By the time the taxable profit is calculated, it's half of that, about 70 billion. In other words, we have approximately 70 billion worth of tax loopholes in the tax code. R&D tax credits, intergroup transactions, group losses, losses brought forward. You can go through the list, an absolute myriad of tax loopholes that allow the biggest corporations of the world to write down their tax liability to almost nothing. Everybody else in the world knows it, Taoiseach. Everybody else in the world is saying it, and yet you continue to claim it is not true. I mean, precisely what tax loopholes have you closed down?
Deputy McDonald, and then the Taoiseach will have about 4 minutes.
So, Taoiseach, the British Prime Minister is in Belfast today, and the word is that she is still in the grip of delusion. She is now saying there will be no backstop, but the Good Friday Agreement is entirely safe. There will be no backstop, but there will be no hard border. It is reminiscent of the earlier position to which she's returned, which is, don't worry Ireland, we look after everything, but we're out of the single market and out of the customs union. In other words, over 2 years and more, we have moved precisely nowhere with this Prime Minister. or with the government that she leads. It's our job not to help Mrs May from her deluded state. She will wallow in that if she so wishes. It's our collective job to protect Irish interests, and that means holding firm on the backstop. It means not blinking, it means not budging. Here's the facts. The fact is, without an agreement and without a backstop, we will have a hard border. Unless there is an intervention and a contingency plan. The fact is that that would raise the possibility of soldiers, not necessarily of the Irish variety, but of the British variety, at such infrastructure. These are real possibilities. But it's not your job, Taoiseach, to conjure up the worst case scenario like that and leave it hang. It's your job as Taoiseach to deal with the realities and the facts, and then to offer a plan for the Irish national interest, for the Irish state, and to protect the peace agreements and to protect our economy and. And I have asked you consistently to identify for us what is the ultimate contingency in the event of no agreement, no backstop, and with the terrible vista that you have conjured up in view. And it seems to me the obvious answer to that is to reach for the Good Friday Agreement, the very agreement that everybody has vowed to protect, and to look to the provisions within that to address the issue of the border. So in other words, if politics, if the Tories, if the negotiating process cannot mitigate or deal with the border, well then place it in the hands of the people and allow for a democratic process where the people will decide on the border, and the people have the opportunity to remove the border, which is the ultimate contingency plan. And yet you have ducked and dived on that issue. You will not be surprised to hear me say again, Taoiseach, and I'll finish on this point, Lascan Gorla, I actually believe you have a responsibility as head of government to begin planning for that ultimate contingency. We have said that you should convene a forum. I believe you should do that. I think you need to not just shape, but the Irish government needs to lead the conversation around Ireland post-Brexit, and particularly Ireland post-crash Brexit. There will be no hard border, Lascan Gorla, on this island. It is not happening. The people will not tolerate it. The people will simply not tolerate it.
There may be no response. We don't have time. Deputy Ryan, sorry. Deputy Ryan.
That we should also convene the parties to the Northern Ireland Assembly to get them representing their people in what could be a very fraught period in Northern Ireland and in the South. Can I ask, though, just to go back to Davos? We have placed our faith all the time in the OECD when it comes to corporate government's new tax rules, and always said we shouldn't do it in the EU, we should wait for the OECD. Were you concerned not just by the attacks from the Polish Prime Minister, from Spanish bankers, but also the comments of the head of the OECD, where he singled out the sweetheart deal that Ireland applied in the Apple tax case as a signal, as is mentioned in the papers today, that we're facing a different corporate tax regime, where the OECD itself and in America maybe is looking to new tax laws where the profits would accrue at point of sales rather than in the home city or of the multinational, Dublin in this case. Was there a shift in Davos this year in what the OECD is saying on corporate tax? Did you and Minister Donoghue have any discussions on that in response to what you heard when you were there?
So we're out of time, but Taoiseach, I'll give you 4 minutes.
Thanks, Lascan Gorla. We don't have the exact costs of the delegation to Davos, but as a delegation of 5, accommodation costs roughly 7,000. Government jet was used, so the only added cost there would be fuel and car transport from Zurich to Davos itself. Lascan Gorla, I always like broadcast media because, at least for people who are interested in it, they get to hear the question and the answer in full, and therefore know the context. And in Davos, I was asked by a Bloomberg journalist, an international journalist, specifically to paint a picture of what a hard border could look like in a worst-case scenario. And I know I get accused of spin a lot of the time, but I'm actually more likely to give a straight answer to a straight question. So that's exactly what I did. was to paint a picture of what a hard border might look like in a worst-case scenario. And I painted a picture of what hard borders look like all over the world, and what the hard border used to look like when we had one in Ireland 30 years ago, although I think I may have said 20 when I should have said 30. And given the response and the reaction from some quarters here, you'd swear the whole thing was my idea, given the reaction from some people. So you can understand, I think, why I'm going to avoid answering hypothetical questions in future. But what I can say is that we haven't made any preparations for physical infrastructure on the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And no matter what happens, deal or no deal, the European Union and Ireland will do everything that we can to avoid a hard border emerging on our island. I am once again amused at Deputy Martin's many conspiracy theories. I should keep a small notebook of them at some stage, but as always, your particular conspiracy theory in relation to this is very far off the mark. I have answered that question, and I'll continue to answer them. In relation to the Polish Prime Minister, I met with the Polish Prime Minister. He confirmed to me that the views expressed by the Polish Foreign Minister were not the views of the Polish government, and that the Polish Foreign Minister was simply looking to try to find a solution to the impasse that we now face. Actually, Ireland and Poland are much closer on Brexit than people may believe. Poland is very close to the UK, has a very strong security relationship with them through NATO, and has a lot of Polish citizens in the UK. And like us, they want the new relationship between the UK and the European Union to be as close as possible after Brexit. And their efforts to be helpful to the UK derive from that particular desire, not from any lack of solidarity with Ireland. From all the other Prime Ministers, I can say we have complete solidarity from all the other Prime Ministers that I had an opportunity to meet in Davos. But there is, of course, a growing concern about what's going to happen at the end of March, and a growing desire to find solutions, because nobody wants to be in the situation whereby we as Europe fail to find a solution to this at the end of March and in the run into the period thereafter. In terms of our international tax laws on corporations, it's an issue that comes up at a lot of international meetings. It actually was less a feature of Davos this year than it had been last year, probably because we are participating in the OECD BEPS process. The OECD does not designate Ireland as a tax haven. We are not on the EU's grey list of tax havens, so everyone in the world that Deputy Boyd Barrett refers to does not include the European Union or the Organisation for OECD, Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is the body that is the expert in this. So your everyone does not include the two most relevant bodies in this regard. And it was probably less of a feature, in fact, this year, precisely because we have collected the Apple tax claim in an escrow account now, awaiting a judgment on that, because we have abolished stateless corporations, because we are phasing out the double Irish, and because we are now one of the few countries that shares our revenue information with other revenue commissioners, so that we can compare how much tax different companies pay in different states. But it is very much our view that profit taxes should be applied where the profits are created. You apply a sales tax, or VAT, at the point of sale. You apply a profit tax where the profits are generated. And that's one of our objections to the proposed digital tax. Volkswagens are sold all over Europe, but the profit tax is paid in Germany. It doesn't get divvied out across the European Union. Airbuses are made in France, and the profit is made in France, but they're sold all over the European Union. But we don't get a cut of the profit taxes because Ryanair buys Airbus, or because leasing companies buy Airbus. The profits are paid where the company is based and generates those profits, not where the sales are made.
That's it.